Hello everybody, and welcome back to the MrEliMac channel. I'm your host, MrEliMac, and today I wanted to do a different type of video, so I decided to postpone the third part of the What If the DCEU was the MEU series because I wanted to talk about a specific topic. So on December 2nd of last week, we saw the end of DC Comics' run on the CW with the premiere of the Superman and Lois series finale. And look, to say I didn't get emotional while watching those final few minutes of that episode would be a complete fabrication. I basically cried watching that finale, and so because of that episode premiering, I wanted to take a look back at that era of television, that era of the CW/the WB's run of DC comic shows on that channel. So I hope you will indulge me in this video because it's something that I really wanted to talk about. You see, when I was a kid, I wasn't a fan of Smallville. I wasn't even the age demographic it wanted when it debuted. I was 6 years old when the show debuted, so I never watched it. When I had cable, I would see reruns air on ABC Family, but I never actually watched them. No, I would turn the channel to Disney Channel or Cartoon Network or Nickelodeon because, to me, that wasn't Superman. To me, Lois and Clark was Superman. When I was growing up, the only way you could be a superhero show was by wearing the tights, like actually wearing the costume of the hero, and to me, Smallville wasn't that, so I never watched it. What's funny was I gave the 2003 show Tarzan a shot, and that wasn't a good show. It wasn't until 2006 that I gave it a shot. So one day when my dad and I were at a Sam's Club, it's a Costco but mainly in Tennessee, I saw that Smallville Season 1 was being sold. Now, my dad and I would always watch different TV shows together, be it animation or live action, and we had a big collection at this point. However, we were looking for something new to watch, so I decided to get Season 1 of the show, just to test out if I'd like it. And, of course, I loved it. I mean, I watched it and I saw a superhero show. And after we finished it, we bought Season 2, then Season 3, and so on until we couldn't buy them anymore. Mainly because Season 6 was still airing at the time. And I proved myself wrong. I was so enamored by Smallville that I wanted to try all the superhero shows that were on at the time. The only other option was a show that was canceled, and that was Birds of Prey, which debuted in 2002 and ended in 2003. I eventually found the pilot for the show and gave it a watch, and let's just say it could have been better. However, I can see what it was going for. It wanted to be an actual comic book show, an actual superhero show, but it had to do it in a way where it didn't feel like one. I also believe Birds of Prey was rushed to production because of the success of Smallville, and they wanted a Batman show that didn't have Batman. More on that later. However, Birds of Prey was not their only shot at having another Smallville. WB tried to develop other superhero shows during that time that I wasn't watching, like, for example, Starman in 2002, which would follow the adventures of Jack and Ted Knight. And then they tried to develop The Flash in 2003, which would follow an unknown Flash with time travel as the main plot point and no costume. They also tried to develop shows from Global Frequency in 2005, which would focus on a private organization relying on worldwide crowdsourcing to stop crimes, and the very popular Aquaman pilot in 2006, which did air on iTunes, and it had massive success. Unfortunately, Smallville was the one that stood at the top, especially when people wanted to develop spin-offs from the show, like a Justice League show and a Supergirl show. But Smallville couldn't be at the top forever. After 10 seasons, Smallville aired its final two-part finale on May 13th, 2011, titled Finale. It saw the returns of Michael Rosenbaum, John Schneider, Annette O'Toole, John Glover, and Aaron Ashmore as Lex Luthor, Jonathan Kent, Martha Kent, Lionel Luthor of Earth 2, and Jimmy Olsen, respectively. The show had a viewership rating of 3.39 million viewers and was met with positive reviews, but the main criticism of the episode was not seeing Tom Welling in the full Superman suit. With Smallville over, it was time for a new start to the DC brand on the CW, and the executives tried their hardest to find Smallville's successor. They first tried going back to the Batman well and started to develop a show called The Graysons in 2008. The show would follow a young Dick Grayson before his parents were killed. However, the Christopher Nolan films kept that from getting further into development. They then looked at developing a TV show focused on the character of Rachel Roth, aka Raven, in 2010. The most they got was a script written for the pilot, but no further details are known as to why it didn't get further into development. Next, they later tried to focus on the lesser-known character of Boston Brand, aka Deadman, in 2011. The show was sure to be a hit since they got the creator of Supernatural, Eric Kripke, to develop the show. However, the show was silently pushed to the side. This led to 2 shows being placed into development, with only one of them making it to air. The first was a series focused on Princess Diana of Themyscira and focused on her time on the island pre-Steve Trevor. That show wouldn't officially get cancelled until 2014, and the next show would be a series they wanted to make all the way back in 2006, but now it was going to be in a bold new direction. And that show would also be the start of a bigger universe, and it didn't even know it yet.
First things first, suit up.
In 2012, Arrow, starring Stephen Amell as the titular hero, would debut on the CW on October 10, 2012, with a viewership rating of 4.14 million viewers, and it received positive reactions from critics. It would also serve as a way to have elements of Batman in a TV show without being Batman. And critics would agree with that sentiment, with Robert Bianco of USA Today characterizing the pilot as a Dark Knight version of Green Arrow. And similar to Smallville when it debuted, I didn't watch it. Look, I'm fickle when it comes to my TV shows, and when I saw a Green Arrow show debuting without Justin Hartley as Green Arrow, I didn't think it was a good idea. In fact, out of my loyalty to Smallville, I didn't want to support the show. However, because of some friends of mine at the time, I gave it a shot. And my first episode, funny enough, was the mid-season finale, Year's End, which revealed the twist of John Barrowman's character being Tommy Merlin's dad, Malcolm Merlin, and that he was the Dark Archer, aka the big bad of the season. And after that episode, I was hooked. The action, the costumes, the story, it had everything I initially wanted Smallville to be, and I continued to watch the show on the CW website, mainly because I couldn't watch it the night of the actual airing due to reasons, and after that, the impossible happened. In July 2013, it was announced that the showrunners of Arrow were developing a Flash TV show that would focus on Barry Allen. Finally, a show that knew which Flash they wanted to be the lead character, and because of what I saw in Arrow, a Flash that would wear the suit. It would later be announced that this Barry would be in the same universe as Arrow, and that he'd appear in 2 episodes of Arrow, with them later making a backdoor pilot in the Arrow series. Grant Gustin was cast in the role, and we were off. He debuted in the Arrow episode The Scientist and was met with positive reception in both of his episodes. And this led to the CW ditching the backdoor pilot idea, and The Flash was picked up straight to series. The Flash pilot would debut on October 7th, 2014, to a viewership rating of 4.8 million viewers, and was met with critical acclaim, with some saying it was better than Arrow. The debut of The Flash on the CW would also see something that fans only thought possible in the movies: massive crossover events. In 2014, The Flash and Arrow had their first crossover event in a loose 2-parter, starting with The Flash's Flash vs. Arrow and ending with Arrow's The Brave and the Bold. The success of this initial crossover would see the shows continue to have a similar crossover event the next year called Heroes Join Forces, which would serve as a setup for a future series. More on that later. And after the success of The Flash, it was time to develop a new superhero show. But not at the CW. In September 2014, CBS committed to airing the new superhero series, Supergirl. The show would be separate from what Arrow and The Flash were doing, however, would have a similar producing staff, specifically Greg Berlanti. And after a 2-year stint on Glee, Melissa Benoist was cast in the lead role and become the third person to portray the Girl of Steel in live action. Supergirl debuted on October 26, 2015 on CBS with a viewership of 12.96 million viewers and received positive reviews from critics. The show would serve as the lone hero on CBS, that is, until it had a special crossover. On March 28, 2016, The Flash guest starred in the episode World's Finest, the first time a CW character appeared on a CBS show. The episode received positive reviews and people loved seeing the two heroes together. So when it was announced that CBS wasn't picking it up for a second season, it was obvious that the CW would be taking the reins for the series. The three major shows of Arrow, Flash, and Supergirl were now the trinity of the Arrowverse. But while we may have had a trinity, why not also have a ragtag team of misfits? In early 2015, talks were being had about a spin-off series for Ray Palmer, aka The Atom. However, those talks would later evolve into a superhero team-up show, a series that would be headlined by former recurring characters such as Captain Cold, Heatwave, Martin Stein, and Sarah Lance. The CW were so impressed by the concept that they ordered it straight to series. The Heroes Join Forces crossover would serve as the launching pad for the series, having characters like Hawkgirl, Hawkman, and Vandal Savage appearing in the crossover. Rip Hunter, the leader of the team, would debut in the pilot episode, being the one that brings the team together to go up against Vandal Savage. The show would be called DC's Legends of Tomorrow. It would initially be pitched as a rotating cast type of show, but it would abandon that idea in subsequent seasons with only dropping characters instead. The two-part pilot debuted on January 21st and 28th of 2016 with a viewership of 3.21 million viewers for part 1 and 2.89 million viewers for part 2. However, the critical reaction wasn't the same as Arrow or The Flash. While most were positive, many critics believed that the show needed some changes, and there would be major changes in subsequent seasons, with the tone changing in future seasons and feeling wackier than the first season. It would become a very well-received show in future seasons, but still not on par with Arrow and The Flash in terms of viewership. However, now that there were 4 major shows on the CW, this means that the crossovers can be even bigger. In November 2016, the Arrowverse premiered Invasion, a 3-part crossover between Arrow, The Flash, and Legends of Tomorrow, with Supergirl serving as a prologue to said crossover. It adapted the comic book story of the same name and was received positively by critics. It was also the most watched week of TV for the CW in 6 years. The very next year, the production team would go even bigger. In November 2017, Crisis on Earth X debuted as a 4-part crossover with all the shows. It centered on the wedding of Barry Allen and Iris West until it was interrupted by alternate versions of the hero characters based on an Earth where the Nazis won during World War II. This was the largest crossover the team had ever done in both the behind-the-scenes work and critical reception, with many critics saying that it was the standard for their crossovers. And after the success of the crossover, the CW decided to add a new superhero show to their ever-expanding roster of shows, and this one was much more serious than the Arrowverse. In May 2017, the CW officially announced that the character of Black Lightning would be brought to live action on their channel and that it would debut on January 16, 2018. The show was initially meant to be separate from the Arrowverse and would follow someone that was different from a typical CW lead. Normally, a majority of the CW lead characters were in their 20s to 30s, while Black Lightning chose to cast Chris Williams instead, an actor who was in his late 40s at the time. It followed him as a retired hero trying to leave his crime-fighting days behind him, but gets sucked back in due to his children. The series also followed his daughters as they developed powers of their own. The series garnered critical acclaim, with many fans hoping that it would someday cross over with the Arrowverse. And it wouldn't be separate for long, but it had to wait for a few more crossovers, particularly one that would introduce a new character to the Arrowverse. In December 2018, the CW debuted the 3-part crossover Elseworlds, which would cross over the 3 top shows in the Arrowverse. Flash, Arrow, and Supergirl came together to start laying the seeds to something bigger than many would expect. However, it wouldn't be the only thing that it would introduce. The crossover would introduce the first major Bat family character to the Arrowverse, Batwoman. Batwoman's debut marked the start of something not many people were expecting, a chance to get Bat characters officially in the Arrowverse. Her debut was also met with an immediate green light to her own spin-off series. The Batwoman series debuted on October 6, 2019, with Ruby Rose in the titular role of Kate Kane, aka Batwoman. Though there was a lot of potential with the series, it was met with a lukewarm response from audiences. However, it was still a landmark show to be the first series to have a lesbian superhero as the headlining character. The series featured many Bat characters, such as Luke Fox, Hush, Duella Dent, and even had an episode that would feature Bruce Wayne himself. What's also interesting about the show was that it starred Rachel Skarsten as Alice, who had previously been featured in the WB series Birds of Prey as Black Canary. Now, with all the pieces set, it was now time for the biggest crossover in Arrowverse history. At the end of the Elseworlds crossover, it was revealed that the next crossover event would be the iconic Crisis on Infinite Earths. This crossover would see all 5 shows be involved, whilst also involving Black Lightning for a tie-in episode. As the creators were leading up to the crossover, announcements came out about cameos for actors from DC's past that would appear in the crossover, such as Burt Ward from the 1960s Batman show, Robert Wuhl from the 1980s Batman movie, Brandon Routh's Superman, and even Kevin Conroy had his first live-action appearance as Batman. We also got to see appearances from WB's past with Ashley Scott from Birds of Prey and Tom Welling and Erica Durance of Smallville appearing. The crossover was very positively received, with many critics focusing on the achievement of a story of this scope and ambition. This crossover was also able to bring together all the Arrowverse shows that were previously in different universes. However, the crossover was not only meant to be a culmination to many years of storytelling, but it was also the ending of the start of it all. A few weeks after Crisis on Infinite Earths aired, the 8th and final season of Arrow premiered its finale, ending its 8-year run. The crossover saw the sacrifice of Oliver Queen to save his friends, and also saw his transformation into the Spectre. The series ultimately ended with Felicity Smoke reuniting with Oliver in the afterlife and finding peace with one another. Not only did the show end there, but it also hinted at new ideas for future shows, such as Mia Smoke Queen, Oliver and Felicity's daughter, teaming up with a time-displaced Dinah Drake and Laura Lance in the future, and John Diggle acquiring a box that emitted a green glow, hinting at a Green Lantern wing. However, not everything would be sunshine and rainbows in the Arrowverse. In 2020, the world would be hit with a global pandemic that would cut a lot of these shows short, and ending a majority of their storylines on cliffhangers. It would also leave some potential spin-off shows like the Mia-led Green Arrow show and a potential Painkiller, a Black Lightning spin-off, in the unknown. Outside of that, Ruby Rose would announce that she would be leaving Batwoman due to wanting to take a break from acting to heal after having back surgery. There were also other factors that were discussed on why she left the show, but I really don't want to get into all of that. It also wouldn't be until 2021 when these shows would start returning to our TV screens, and for 2 of these shows, we would see them on their final seasons. In 2021, Supergirl and Black Lightning would begin their final run on the CW. Black Lightning would premiere its final season on February 8th and focus on ending the series-long threat of Tobias Whale. The hero was able to defeat his archenemy and is able to move on with his life and pass the torch to its children. Supergirl would premiere its final season on March 30th and focus on defeating Lex Luthor one last time. The show would end with Kara revealing she's Supergirl to the world and live a life without a dual identity. Both shows promised to show the world a new type of hero, and they both succeeded. However, with 2 DC shows leaving the CW, 2 shows would debut to massive fanfare. In 2020 and 2021, 2 major shows appeared to add new eyes to the CW. The first show was Stargirl. Originally produced for the ill-fated DC Universe app, Stargirl focused on Courtney Whitmore and her family and their adventures in the small town of Blue Valley. It would later expand to be more than just a show about Stargirl. It would become a show about the Justice Society of America, and for many fans, this was a more focused look at the JSA outside of their appearances on Legends of Tomorrow Season 2. Stargirl would prove to be a success on the CW. The next series was Superman and Lois. Superman and Lois focused on Tyler Hoechlin's Superman and Bitsy Tulloch's Lois Lane, who previously debuted in Supergirl. It followed their lives as parents to their twin sons and their new life in Smallville. This series would garner critical acclaim from many outlets, with many calling Tyler Hoechlin the best Superman ever. Though these 2 years would add to its roster of shows, 2022 would be the beginning of the end. 2022 saw the end of 4 separate DC shows, with one of those shows debuting that same year. Naomi, a series based on the Brian Michael Bendis comic, debuted on January 11th and ended on March 10th, only lasting 1 season. While it had positive reception and a powerhouse creative team with Ava DuVernay leading the charge, the ratings were not what the CW was hoping, thus canceling it. But before Naomi ended, audience saw the end of Batwoman. After the departure of Ruby Rose, Javicia Leslie took on the role of Ryan Wilder and became the new Batwoman. However, audiences were not fully swayed by this change. While ratings were good, they weren't what the CW wanted, and thus canceled the series after Batwoman defeated her half-brother, who would become the second iteration of the Joker. And the next show on the chopping block was Stargirl. After 3 fun seasons, the CW didn't believe the ratings matched what it wanted and canceled the series, ending with a final shot of the JSA going off to save the day. And the final show to meet its end was The Legends of Tomorrow. Though ratings weren't meeting expectations, Legends of Tomorrow was almost always met with positive audience reception. The writers on their show tried their hardest to end in a way where they would get renewed by introducing Donald Faison as Booster Gold, but that wasn't enough. CW canceled the series after 7 seasons, proving to be the little show that could. And this was just the start of the cuts. 2022 saw the CW being acquired by the Next Star Media Group, which was another major faction in all of the cancellations. This would lead to more shows announcing their final seasons, or the debut of shows that wouldn't gather an audience. One of the shows that debuted in 2023 but didn't gain an audience was Gotham Knights. Gotham Knights debuted on March 14th and ended on June 27th. It was meant to serve as a show that would follow the son of Bruce Wayne and multiple sidekicks of Batman. However, it was critically panned, and the people in charge of the CW deemed the show to be too expensive to produce. It was cancelled before it could continue plot lines such as Harvey Dent's descent into Two-Face. And the next show that would be coming to an end was The Flash. After 9 seasons, Grant Gustin crew had one last run, wrapping up multiple plot threads, including one involving Eddie Thawne becoming Cobalt Blue. While the series was met with mixed reactions throughout the years, The Flash served as a beacon of hope for the Arrowverse. And once it ended the multi-year universe that started all the way back in 2012. But there was still one show left that was also wrapping up its time on the CW. On November 2nd, 2023, it was announced that Superman and Lois Season 4 would serve as the final season. The decision was made by Warner Bros. Discovery to avoid competition with the upcoming movie Superman. The season focused on wrapping up the main thread of Lex Luthor and the defeat of Doomsday. The show ended on December 2nd, 2024, with Superman and Lois meeting in the afterlife and ending with a kiss. This scene and this moment was the final moment of DC's lifespan on the CW. From Smallville to Arrow to Superman and Lois, DC's history on the CW has been a slightly chaotic one, with shows that achieved global success to shows that never got a chance. It felt appropriate that DC's time ended with Superman. People might look down on these shows, but these shows helped many audiences be introduced to some obscure characters. Green Arrow was a popular character to comic book fans, but Smallville and Arrow introduced him to a wider audience. The Flash TV show helped people love the character to the point where people would have preferred to see him as the film version of the Flash instead of Ezra Miller. And I know I'm speaking from a biased point of view because of my love for some of these shows, but these shows helped me love these characters and helped me respect these characters. I loved these shows. Even at their worst, I loved these shows. I hope that in the future, we remember these shows fondly. So thank you all so much for indulging me with this video, because the CW TV shows and the WB TV shows have been something that I have loved for many, many years. I remember when I first actually started following them, and I wanted to do a video sort of doing an in memoriam to those shows. And I wanted to talk about those shows because of how much of an impact they had on me in terms of when it came to me loving TV and loving the DC characters, because again, those shows had a lot of emphasis on me. And actually, whenever you watch those shows, it very much informs what a lot of the movies have done and what a lot of fans have wanted the movies to do. And yeah, I just really wanted to talk about these shows. So again, I hope that you all enjoyed this video. I hope you all please hit the thumbs up button if you like this video. Also, leave a comment down below. What was your favorite show to watch on the CW/the WB, and were there any shows that you wanted them to make at that time period? Because there were a lot of shows that were in development that ultimately didn't get made. And also leave in the comments below. Also leave a comment down below talking about your favorite moment from the CW shows, whether that be from Smallville, Birds of Prey, the Arrowverse. I would love to know what was your favorite moment from those shows. So until next time, I've been Mr. Eli Mac, you've been the audience, and I hope you all remember to have a great rest of the day.